So in the last year, I've really tried experimenting a lot with my channel and trying to find my own look. I've really wanted to not just up my video quality in general and my production quality and not edit videos on CapCut, but I really want to improve my color grading and specifically leaning more into that film vibe, which is funny because some people when they think of film probably think less quality, fuzzy and bad and shaky, but I disagree. About a month ago, the team at Dehancer reached out to me offering to let me try out their product in exchange for an honest review, which is what I'm doing right now. They use a really interesting analog approach, which comes from actual analog film development to editing digital image and video. Their software has a lot of film-like features, including over 60 film profiles, really good grain, bloom, halation, and a ton of other effects. Working with it for the last month, it's been really cool to get into everything and learn about the actual film processes that are behind of everything and the science behind why physical film looks the way it does. I've been using their Pro OFX video plugin for Davinci Resolve, which is what I'll show you guys today. So here's just a quick look around their website and the kind of stuff that they have to offer. Of course, there's their products, which they don't just have for DaVinci, Adobe, and Final Cut, but they also offer individual tools like just their grain or bloom or halation, which is a nice option. If you click around, there's a lot of cool sections about just their history, the development process through working with film to get to this point, which is interesting to read through. There's also good support sections with the programs itself about how to use it, describing each tool, and some good tips. Installation was pretty straightforward for me, especially since I've never used any plugins for DaVinci. I'm already kind of new enough at DaVinci as it is, but it comes with a lot of PDFs that take you through it and makes it easy enough to do. A good note is to make sure you know what kind of GPU you have, the brand, NVIDIA, because there's two different versions for that. That is another big note about this software, is that it is very GPU intensive, especially when it comes to its grain generation. But I've found that even if it's pretty laggy as you're editing, I can work with the stills and then just wait for the final export to see it look all smooth, which it works. So here's a little example of my kind of miniature workflow. Here I have an example shot from a lake I went to. It's already been transformed from log, so this is the original, and I just did some basic stuff before. The final part, after you've done all the basic and you have a normal image, is when you should put the plugin. So I have it labeled, but it's not on yet. You go to your library of effects, and at the very bottom is this one. You drag it on. There's a lot going on, but let me simplify this real quick. Okay, so already this should be a lot less overwhelming. We see all the different things here, and it's best to just do it in order. So input is basically what the whole point of all of these already is. So it's before all of this is applied. So you can change the exposure before anything else, temperature, tint. I already did that here, so I usually don't do much here. Then in film, this is the big part where you get to pick the actual film stock that it's going to be basing it off of. It has all these random ones, but it has the big names like Fujicolor, has a ton of Fujicolor, and Kodak, specifically Kodak Gold 200, which is pretty big. I really like Portra 400 in a lot of what I do. It's very subtle, but nice colors. You can see the difference already just with that being on. Film developer compression, I don't really use all that much. I usually just leave them disabled. You can do a lot of deep contrasting work in here, especially with the colors also, because again, it's mimicking the developer of the film. Compression deals a lot with the whites, like you can see especially in the highlights in the background. Expand is a really big one. This deals with just the black and the white point, which is basically the dynamic range of the picture. I use this one a lot. So this picture looks a little bit flat, so I kind of want to deepen the blacks of it, but I don't want to crush the blacks too bad, but you can see nothing's really going too far down here. And then the whites are obviously the brightest parts of the picture. This could probably go a little bit higher. Again, nothing's clipping, so this looks good. This is the before and after, a lot more poppy. The print is another big one. This is basically the last step in the analog film simulation process, where it's the actual film that it is printed on. So you see there's Fujifilm film, Kodak, and then there's also Kodak glossy paper, so as if it's printed on paper for you to look at. These two, I believe, are meant to replicate film that's ready to be projected as a final moving picture. I really like the Kodak because, I'm already using the Kodak film stock, so I might as well use the Kodak print because I just really like how the greens are. Sometimes it makes them too golden, which if that ever happens, I usually go back into one of these and just you see I already done it here. Normally the greens would look really yellow. I like to make them a little more green, so just pull that down. And then again in here, this is more stuff with contrast and exposure. and temperature, but it's from the printing stage. This affects how the temperature of the printing light is. So it's different. Like, there's a lot of the stuff where like you'll see kind of things repeat, but they're at technically different steps of the process. Exposure is a big one because you've already done the detail of the image. So I made sure nothing was clipping before. So now I can decide to clip up there or clip down here if I want to, but it's a lot less dramatic, I think. Here. And then color density is interesting. It's kind of like saturation. It's like how physically close, I believe, like the colors are, like how dense it is. And tonal contrast, again, contrast of the tones. So already it looks very different. That's the bulk of the color and the light work. There is an extra one here, color head. I don't use this a lot, but it's really useful if you're trying to make shots like match to each other. So this is where you can change like all the colors. So this is yellow, blue, magenta and green, cyan, red. If you're doing this, you would do like tiny little hints to the side, so like I might actually want a little bit of a red tone. And then these are slightly more subtle. The shadows, same idea. Yellowy reds in the shadows, mid-tones, highlights, a little bit more golden hour vibes. So it's very subtle, but you know, this is the fun stuff. So this is what it would look like so far. No film grain. With the film grain, this is kind of what Dehancer is known for, at least in the colorist community that I've heard, that they do have really legit film grain. Normally on like crappy little phone editing things, if there's a grain filter, that's what it is. It's just a flat filter over the picture. But this actually generates every frame, every pixel, an individual like kernel of film. So it's very adaptive. I can hear my computer screaming as I'm doing that. There's a lot you can do. You can do even custom if you wanted to. You can do the different focal lengths and ISOs, which basically the lower the focal length, the bigger it is. So like each one you can change the amount to. So if I bump this up, you can see 8mm bumped up is very big, but something like 65 or 35 is a lot smaller. So I'm still trying to figure out what I like the best. I usually land around 35 to 50 just because it's not too dramatic. Halation and bloom, these are my favorite. Halation, basically it just gives a red glow around the highlights, where if you do no remjet, it makes it really dramatic. Remjet is basically, I think it's a layer that they put when they're developing film to try and prevent too much halation from happening. If you put no, you can see it turns on a lot more. This shot doesn't have a lot of like super bright highlights, so it's just coming in around here at the top of this tower, this bridge. But yeah, since I usually don't use the no remjet because it's kind of a lot. For this one, I think I will go ahead and do no remjet just so I have that little bit around the top here. Bloom is similar, except it's just a white kind of glow around the bright highlights. It just makes it a little bit more dreamy. If I bump this up, let's say if I turn it to 8, make it dramatic as possible. It's like you see it on the edge of a lot of things. Both of these mimicking the way that the light and the brightest areas are being dealt with. Film damage is interesting. If you enable it, you can see a ton of these scratches appear and they change every single frame, which is really nice. Maybe I'll just use a little bit. Film breath is really interesting. It mimics how the film is developed inconsistently, or like through the lens inconsistently. And every frame, it'll slightly change like the tint of like magenta to green or the exposure a little bit. It's really hard to show since obviously when I try playing this, the frame rate drops a lot because this has not been exported yet. But dramatic version, you can kind of see it rotates its tint between the magenta-y and the green. Some people don't like that because they spend all this time trying to perfect the color and then that just kind of throws it all off, but I think it's cool sometimes. Gate weave is also interesting. It mimics how the film kind of shakes as it's being played through like the little rudders. It'll crop in your picture a little bit and it'll just slightly shake it around. It gives it that like old-timey vibe, like you're watching it off of a projector or something. Yeah, just a little, just subtle. And then these are kind of the fun extra things. The overscan is the little film borders, and you can do a lot with them. There's a lot of different ones. You can change the scale of it. You can flip the little sides that it does. You can change the gate of it so that the gate is like the edge. So if you uncheck static gate, it'll actually change throughout it, which looks really nice. A little intense for my computer at the moment. The last couple of things, there's a vignette you could use, kind of just basic vignette. And all of these have these like mask modes you can use, which are really useful for figuring out like exactly how big what you're doing is. The last couple fancy things, they have some monitors here. Output, this is interesting. You can change the whole final effect. So this is our base image that we started with, and you can have like 50% intensity or 100. You can output this as a LUT, which is really useful, but I kind of do it differently. So all the way from this all the way to here. Something really useful you can do, which is a complete lifesaver because you obviously don't want to do all of this over and over again. If you right click and grab a still and then go to your gallery, you can see that it makes a still. And what you can do is if you have other clips, so let's go ahead and add another clip from this trip. You can then go to this clip, which doesn't even have my normal power grade of anything with it, and just center click with your mouse and it'll apply everything you did to this one, including everything before, which is really, really nice and useful. So this is the log before with all these base edits with the same edits. Sometimes you'll still have to tweak things, like this one has a lot brighter highlights than the other clip. Turn down some of those base, go into Dehancer, maybe fix some exposures. But yeah, and then it's nice if you have so many clips here, you can just like shift click all, go to that gallery, middle click, and it'll apply it to all of them. You can grade it all in one go like that. Obviously, trying to watch these, it's just a little laggy, and it'll take a little bit to export, I mean, for me. But once it does, then, you know, you get your final result like this. So Dehancer also has an iOS app, which again, is just for iOS, unfortunately. And I actually knew about them because of that app before they ever even reached out to me. It was around last summer, so the app was pretty similar, but there's a little bit of new features now. And it's pretty much the same thing as the video plugin. There's a ton of presets for all the same film profiles, and then inside each preset, you can go through and edit all the same categories. So the developer, the compression, the same tools and effects like film grain, halation, bloom, even the overlays and everything are on there too. And you can do it with both photo and video. So if you're mainly interested in the photography aspect or short videos for just like social media and stuff, the app honestly is like way more streamlined and easier. And the app itself is free. Obviously there's a subscription after, but I think you can do your first like 10 photos or videos and play around with it for free. So if you don't want to go the PC route and you just want to play around and see what kind of stuff you can make, that's a really good option. I feel like a weather lady right now. We gotta hurry this up because it's like about to rain. Overall, I've had a really fun time working with Dehancer, especially for me lately. I've been really looking for the new way to push my kind of content and filmmaking stuff and projects to a higher level, and this is the perfect thing for me. I really like how linear it is, how you can follow each step and just work from start to finish, and how the actual process is, which helps for a newbie who can be very overwhelmed by lots of new information, but it still allows a super high amount of creativity and lots of so much miniature tweaking of every little thing in like 10 different areas. The only downside is it can be a little expensive, but the light version is really good for that, and the individual tools like just the grain or halation. But if you wanted any help with that, if you check out their website, which is linked in the description, you can use my code RINES10, which they were so nice to offer me, to get 10% off anything on their website except the iOS subscription. That is separate, which could help out a lot if you wanted to use like just the light program or just one of the tools like halation or something. And make sure you have a nice GPU. Enough. I don't know how old mine is. It was a hand-me-down from my husband. Thank you to Dehancer for letting me use their stuff and offering me that code that you guys can use. And yeah, maybe I'll make more stuff with it. Or maybe I won't. I don't know. All right, thanks.